Hi there, Dan from onlinebasscourses.com. Hope you're doing really well. Now, what I thought I'd do today is just put together a simple 4-chord chord progression and show you some ideas that you can use to make your own bass lines up. So what I have here is I've got 4 chords. We've got B minor, I've got going to G, and then E minor to C. Now, I've got a backing track here, which I'm going to play in a minute and show you some ideas, but you can download that. I'll put a link below where you can do that. So you can use some of these ideas yourself. But really what I'm going to do today, I'm just going to be talking about some intervals, some scales, some places on the fretboard that you can play those notes. And really important is timing, feel, and groove. So I'm just going to dive straight in, and then I'll explain a little bit more of the theory behind this. But I'm just going to play the simplest thing that you can really do, which is just root notes. So I'm going to go 7th fret E string to 3rd fret E string, so that's the B to the G, open E to the 8th fret of the E string. Keep it all in the E string for now, and that's the C at the end. As I go, so to stop me having to keep pressing stop on that, I'm just going to add some rhythm in as we go, but I'll stick to root notes. So when I made this backing track, I literally just I've got Stylus RMX, which is a great sort of drum machine made by Spectrasonics. Now, I just put that on, I found the first drum beat, and I just whacked it up and put it on a loop. So no thought went into it, and I haven't really been listening to it that much. But as I was playing, I just was catching the kick drum, and I was sticking with that. So look, just a root note, but playing with time, feel, and groove. Now, those, I think, are the most 3 important things as a bass player you can think of. You can just play the simplest thing in the world, but play it with feel, groove, and timing, bit of flair, and it just sounds great. And that's really kind of one of the things I wanted to show you on this video, is that you don't always have to embellish and make things busy. You know, that is often the best way to go. So what I'm going to do now is just going to very quickly go through whatever comes into my head. Before I do that, I'll mention the theory behind this. So B minor, G, and E minor, the first 3 chords of this progression, all come from the same key. It's B natural minor, which is 7, 9, 10, fret 7, 9, 10 on the E string, and the A string, same fret, 7, 9, 10, and then 7, 9 on the D string. Now, all those notes can be used to link up the chords, the first 3 chords anyway, and to play all kinds of, you know, interesting bass lines over that, which I'll get onto. The 4th chord is not from that key, it's a C chord. And you can do something a bit different to that, which I'll get onto. But what I'll do now is I'll press play again, and I'm just going to add a 5th in. So a 5th is if your root note is the B on the 7th fret, you just go 2 frets this way, 1 string down to the ground, you've got a 5th, okay? And so let's make up a bass line with roots and 5ths. I'm going to be very mindful again of the rhythms that I'm going to create between those 2 notes. Okay, so 5ths sound really good. Octaves now. So that's 2 across and 2 strings across this time, and that's an octave. That's really simple. The octave is just the same note as the first note. Used a lot in funk. And that's just the root and the octave there. I didn't do the 5th. But now I'll press play and I'll do something with roots, 5ths and octaves. So far kind of relatively simple, right? Now, I think the main thing as I'm going, and I am kind of making this up as I go because it's quite fun. And I do a lot of recording, so this is really useful for jam sessions, for improvising with other musicians, kind of on the fly quite quickly, or making up your own parts. Now, a lot of this comes from just having listened to a lot of different music and kind of like copying my favorite bass lines and then deconstructing them and working out what's going on. And often, in the vast majority of bass lines, you'll hear a lot of the same things going on, okay? So I hope this helps a little bit with ear training as well. If you have your root, your fifth, and your octave, and you can learn the sound of it and also the location of those notes and those shapes on the bass, it's really, really useful. So let's start mixing things up a little bit more. So let's create something a little bit more melodic, a little bit more tuneful. Now, when we do that, often when you create melodic parts on a bass, you're using notes from the scale, okay? So I'll show you. If I take the first three notes of this scale, the B natural minor scale, which is B, C sharp, D, which is the frets 7, 9, and 10. Let me put that up the octave. So that sounds quite nice. I'm just going root, fifth, and doing that up the octave. And I'm going to just take that pattern and move it to the different chords. It will be the same pattern wherever I have minor chords. So the B minor chord and the E minor chord, they can use the same shapes, provided I move the root note to the correct place. I can use the same shapes. And actually the G major chord and the C major chord, the same thing can happen. They're the same shapes. You can really think visually on the bass because it's full of patterns. So I think I'll do that. And then when I go to the G, it's the same pattern, almost one note different. So I've got my G on the 3rd fret. I've got the 5th on the 5th fret of the A string. Notice I'm saying the interval and not the note name a lot, because if I'm in a horrible key like F sharp, I can just still say the 5th and it's still the same pattern. But either way, it's fine. You should know the notes as well. So what I did there, I went 3rd fret, E string. That's that root 5th octave again. And G, A, B. Those are the first notes, first three notes of this chord, the scale here. Now, every scale, this B natural minor scale, every note on that scale contains a mode. And I'm not going to get too into modes for this video. I'll put a link to another video. I've explained a bit more about modes, but that really helps to know your modes. I'll explain it a little bit. Why not? On the B, you can use Aeolian, is your natural minor. On the G, it would be G Lydian. On the E, you've got E Dorian. And that C, I told you before, it's not from this key. So if you have a major chord that comes from outside the key, nearly all the time you can play a Lydian mode over it. So a Lydian mode is just if you play a major scale, but raise the 4th 1 fret to make a sharpened 4th. So instead of that Lydian note. Now you can start to get melodic lines. So I'm going to go. And it's just the same formula. Root, 5th, octave, and then go up the first three notes of that mode. Nice. It starts to sound a bit more like a hook, a bit more like an engineered line that I've come up with. Although, you know, I must admit that I don't know where I found that bass line from. It would have come from like a famous bass line, but I tend to use that kind of thing a lot. And that's what you'll do. The more you listen and the more different bass lines you'll learn, you'll kind of connect those ideas to things that you want to play and fills you want to play and lines you want to play. So let's do a similar idea. I'm going to do that now. I'm going to go root, 5th, 7th octave, and I'm going to change that for whatever chord. So when you're on a minor chord, so that's the B minor and the E minor, you can do this pattern. So I've got my first finger on the root note, that's the 7th fret, the B. Got my 5th, 2 frets higher. Minor 7th is on the same fret, just drop 2 strings down, and the octave is there, 2 across, 2 down. Now, I know these patterns like the back of my hand, and I also know the sound that they're going to create, okay? So really learn that. I just skip to the E minor chord. It's exactly the same shape. If you drop down to the 7th fret of the A string and do the same shape starting from there, it's the same pattern. And that works because they're both minor chords. Going to the G major 7th, it's the same, exactly the same shape, except the minor 7th, well, it's a major 7th, so you need to make it go up a fret. You'll notice the major 7th is right next door to the octave, and the minor 7th you have to leave a gap. Again, thinking visually, thinking patterns. That's exactly the same shape as the C. So I'm just going to do that now, and I'm being very prescriptive here. I'm just going to do this pattern for this example. I'm going to use fifths for this pattern, just root notes for this pattern. But obviously you can mix and match and do whatever you like. If you're in a jam session or you're playing with other musicians, you can do different things for different sections. So let's see what that pattern sounds like. Like that one. Now again, I'm really trying to relax, keeping shoulders relaxed, keeping the bass held properly, so that and breathing normally, so I'm not tensed up, just so I can really lock in to the groove of this whole thing. I think I've mentioned it a few times, but that's really important to never lose sight of that. You can always play anything, and if it's in time and it feels good, then you're good to go. Okay, a couple more brief ideas I can think of right now off the top of my head is this. So we have a B minor, we have a G major, we have an E minor chord and a C major chord. For major chords, you never have to say major. You can just say G and C and it means major, okay? So we've got B minor, G, E minor, C. And what I'm going to do now is I can play a pentatonic scale over each of those. Now all the pentatonic scale is, it's a minor pentatonic. Then within those notes, you are playing your root, your fifth, your minor 7th, and your octave. And there's only a couple more notes in there. So, and that's, arpeggios and triads. These are the kinds of little building blocks, I guess, that come from the scales. And really, all bass lines are made from these things. So, if I'm on a B minor, I can do that. On the G, that's a particularly useful pattern for a major pentatonic, and I'll show you that. So I'm going, the G is on the 3rd fret of the E string. I'm just shifting my hand across, thumb at the back of the neck, shifting across to the 5th fret, 7th fret. That's just the first 3 notes of the scale. I can play first finger, 3rd finger on the 5th and 7th frets of the A string. That's the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pent means 5. And then if I go to the G on the D string, 5th fret of the D string, I have the next 5 notes. And because you're on one string for 3 notes, you do slidey stuff. So that pattern there, I can do again on the C. That's actually probably too many notes. I probably won't use all those notes, but they are there if I want them. So let's see what that sounds like. perhaps a little bit busy. I am making this up on the spot, but just to show you that those notes do fit over this. Let's go back to something a little bit more simple now. I'm just going to do root notes again. Now again, this style is whatever style this is. This isn't a generic, you know, drum beat that can be used. It's not a jazz drum beat. It's not a rock drum beat. So perhaps what I'm about to do won't stylistically fit over this, but I'm going to just do it anyway. I'm just going to play eighth notes, sort of driving eighth note thing, which is usually kind of good for rock. Okay, I'm just going to do that, and I'm going to connect up the root notes with notes from the scale. So remember we had, without the track, it would be something like this. So we got the note and the notes from the scale. So I'm just walking down until I hit the G. Can keep going down to the E. I can walk all the way up to the C. And just a little fill over that C Lydian. Do you remember I said that the C is not from the key, so you can use the Lydian. So that sounds nice and melodic if I do that. Let's just see what that sounds like now. And at the end, root fifth, hammer on to a what's that? That's a second up the octave, which is a ninth. I suppose I haven't really spoken about that. Hammer on, slides, vibrato, all that kind of stuff. That coupled with your groove and your timing and your feel, those articulations really kind of bring playing to life. So I think that's a bit of an impromptu video. I knocked up that track really quickly. I'm gonna give that to you if you just, you know, if you just head to that link and you can download that. But you know, for now, I just wanted to show you, just off the top of my head, just a few little ideas that you can use to make up a bass line. And I'm going to be doing quite a few more of these types of things. So if you've got any recommendations for styles that you want, you know, obviously a walking jazz bass line is gonna be similar to this, but a little bit different. You know, you'll be using triads, arpeggios, and the like, but you'll be playing a slightly different feel. So I'll be doing more. So let me know in the comments what you want. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.